Hey everybody, this is Al. We're here back at the Kelly Writers House, and this is our Week 6 live webcast, and we have an audience, a group of discussants, participants who are here in the room, and let's make some noise so they know that there are people here. Yeah, and maybe Zach. Okay, that's very cool. All right, and I'm also here with Emily Harnett, the show-stoppingly amazing, articulate Emily Harnett.
Thanks, Al.
Did I call you fussy in class yesterday?
I mean, it's true.
And Davey.
Hi, Al.
So, Davey, you do this thing. It's like, I'm too far away, but don't worry, I know how to do it. Right? Okay, that's good. And Lily Applebaum.
Hello.
Hi, Lily. Gabe.
Hi, Al.
And we have in the Hangout, so-called. What? Did I not give you enough of a...
No, I was laughing at Emily.
She's making faces at you. And Amaris Kachansky is here. Good evening, good late
Hello,
afternoon,
everyone.
Good evening. Hey. And Dave Poplar is here. Hi,
Good
Dave.
evening.
And Dave, incorrectly or correctly, a lot of people who watch the video discussions with the Beats always think, oh, Dave, this is his week because he's such a beat. That's just the hair and beard. You're actually... Right?
Yeah,
You're actually...
I was born to wear black, but yeah, I think I'm more of a contemporary avant-garde language poet appreciator than the Beats.
So let's not all make the assumption, please. Max McKenna's here from Chicago. Hey, Max.
Hey, Al.
Hey, good to see you. Molly, hello from Los Angeles. It's good to see you. All right. So, and we have Anna is here. Anna Strong is here at the microphone and the phone. Somebody called earlier, or was that just a test?
It was a ghost, I don't know.
A ghost. And we have Jason fresh from his West Coast poetry reading tour. Hey, Jason.
Hey.
Whoa.
It's good to be,
And
I'd like to say it's good to be back
Yay.
on the East Coast.
we missed you, except we saw you on the West
Yeah,
Coast, which was so
yes.
amazing. And we have a number of people here who are, might as well sort of say it clearly, the class that Gabe and Lily and Davey and Anna and Emily and I teach. Gosh.
It's a lot of us.
It's a lot of us. There are probably about 35 students in the class, and we meet in this room on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and those students are participating in ModPo. We also have a few weeks before and a few weeks after ModPo, but a number of them are here, and we're just glad, and don't be surprised if Jason passes along the microphone to you at a certain point. Today we're going to talk about the beat poets, or really beat plus. I mean, beat poets, and then people who are influenced by the beats or who are interested in the spoken word tradition that the beats sort of helped make happen. And then there's some kind of beat skeptics that come along, so we'll get to those. 215-573-9752 is the number, 215-573-9752. And the first person who calls will get a copy of Julia Block's Valley Fever, which is an amazing book, such an amazing book. There's some like mid-California Sacramento poems in here, among other things. I think the valley referred to in the title sorry, Zach, I'm moving around. The valley in the title is in part, of course, that hot place, the Sacramento Valley. And the second person to call will get to have a copy of a book I've already given away at least once, and that is Heatwake, Jason Suska's book that he's been reading from on his tour, West Coast tour. And the third person to call, womp, 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 gets a copy of my book, and the title is Counter-Revolution of the Word, the Anti-Communist Attack on Modern Poetry. I'd be happy to tell you all about that book sometime, but I generally try to suppress that instinct because it's like a 500-page book and it takes a long. But this is really hard to find because it's expensive. So anyway, third caller. Okay, 2 shout-outs, and then we'll get started with questions and comments. I received in the mail for all of us a copper rose. This is a copper rose. So, of course, it refers to what poem? Give Julia the microphone. Cold call. Sorry, Julia. Oh, this is so hard.
Julia.
She's avoiding.
Look
This
here,
is right
Julia.
there. Anybody know? Anybody know what poem? Danny? No? Oh, wait. Dan's got it.
I was gonna go to Gertrude Stein's "A Rose, a Rose, a Rose."
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. It's not entirely. Yeah, Regina, do you know it? We didn't really talk about it in class, and we didn't really talk about it during the webcast that week. Davy's searching, like, because Davy likes to have right answers.
I know, but I'm gonna hang on to it. I'm gonna allow an 88er to get it. I think they know it.
You're trying to be teacherly?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody? Emily? No. Oh, come on. Lily knows. Copper Rose. Anna?
Beauty and the Beast.
Can we sing the first song? No. That's
The first song about like living in provincial life. That one.
Oh, yeah. That's a really good one. That opening number is really good. Anna Strong.
The Rose is obsolete.
The Rose is obsolete because he's interested in, right, roses that are
Petals
made
that
of
end in
copper.
edges.
Roses that are, yeah. And this is, so there's a note that goes with it that tells me that you can bend the brass leaves. You can, and there's a beautiful card that goes with it. The rose carried weight of love, but love is at an end of roses. So I'm really happy about that. Thank you, Joy, who sent that to us. And then one other shout out, and then we'll get started. I mean, it's a recommendation of a thread. It's called Salon Modponik, as in beatnik, Modponik, paying homage to Kaufman. That's Bob Kaufman. And Laura, Jack, Julie, Mandana, Nadia, Izzy, our Izzy here from English 88, and Meredith are talking about the lines of Bob Kaufman's jail poems that they love. And Izzy's favorite lines are as follows in that poem, Jail Poems. And maybe this is a prompt for us to talk about Kaufman during this hour. Someone who I am is no one. Something I have done is nothing. Someplace I have been is nowhere. I am not me. What of the answers I must find questions for? All these strange streets I must find cities for. Thank God for beatniks. Jason, you have the mic. Why would Bob Kaufman in jail, or I guess, yeah, the jail poems were written in jail, so why would he say thank God for beatniks at the end of that, do you think? And then after Jason thinks of an answer, I'm going to ask Max McKenna. Why would you?
I'm stumped.
Oh, that's cool. Let's go to Max and come back to you then. Max, why would Bob Kaufman? I mean, there's a beautiful reversal there. You can avoid my question about beatnik. And what of the answers I might find questions for? All these strange streets I must find cities for. Thank God for beatniks. Any thoughts?
I was just reviewing the poems as you were asking the question.
Yeah. All right, Jason's ready, Max.
Go,
All
Jason, and then I'll pick up the slack.
Okay. Well, Izzy is one of my students in my creative writing workshop, so I think that maybe it's the God that's throwing me off, but to have thanks for beatniks is to have those places that are imagined be populated by possibility and by energy and a reason to something to enter into once one leaves the confines of the jail.
Okay, cool. Davey, you think about cities all the time. So how do we connect the first part of that stanza that Izzy likes? Someone who I am is no one. Something I have done is nothing. So there's a lot of negative identification. There's a little bit of Ellisonian invisibility there. So how do we connect with Bob Kaufman's feeling like he has no identity, and that seems to be temporarily okay? How do you connect that to the strange streets I must find cities for, and then beatniks? That's the essence of this week.
Well, something that you lose in jail is scale and infrastructure. So you don't get to move through space. You don't get the experience of moving down streets, of seeing things at a large scale, and something that the beats are really good at doing is thinking about engaging with fragments of space, engaging with decontextualized space. I mean, Allen Ginsberg, in Howl, I enjoy counting the number of times he like jumps off of things, jumps off of steps.
He or others. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like misuses infrastructure. And so this is, like you don't get to have an identity in jail. You don't get to be a self. You don't get to have the kinds of invisible interactions with people that like strangers seeing you on the street makes you a person.
Yeah.
And so you develop streets. I mean, like where the lines of a poem are kind of like streets in a city. You don't get to place those within an infrastructure. And so you answer, but you can't have questions. You get taken out of context, and the beats are great at that.
And the beats are great, so you got to it at the end. Thank God for beatniks. Max, I'm going to turn to you, but by the time this is written in the late 50s, published in 60, I think, beatnik was already a derogatory, mocking term for anyone, living in the hinterland who's, sort of not a San Franciscan or a Greenwich Villager, but who, maybe grows a goatee and listens to rock and roll late at night or whatever, and then is called by the teachers and the principal and the parents who are squares and upset about this rebel, apparently without a cause, a beatnik. Now, just at that time, as soon as it became fashionable and people were taking beatnik tours of San Francisco, Bob Kaufman was going around, typically he would cover his face with Band-Aids and crosses, and he would go up to cars. He'd stop cars on the streets of San Francisco and recite poems. So he was, and he wasn't without a home. He wasn't homeless, but he was, I don't know what the right word is, performing is too easy a word, but he was being a beatnik just at the time when it was mocked. And so Thank God for Beatniks is sincere, but it's hilarious at the same time, because here's this guy who's really an outsider saying beatniks are great because they want to be at the margin, and that's the only place I'm going to find myself. Max, any thoughts on this before we move on?
Can you hear me and or see me?
Yes.
Okay, weird. I think my camera's...
Well, we can hear you, but you're in we can only see a really cool still shot of you. It looks like you've just smoked a cigar.
I do look pretty cool there.
You are? Did you just go running and then smoke the cigar? What's the story?
That's how you got to do it. Yeah, I mean, just to keep going off of... whoa, I think I'm back now. I'm back.
Yeah, you are. Hey.
Oh, there we go. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. It's this. I really like this inversion of the construction of the city, or the concept of the city. You have the streets first, and you have to find the city for it, rather than the city being the given, and then having to then go in and discover the streets. So it's this. Yeah. It's this kind of cutting against the grain radically.
Yes.
Right. That happens there, and that he's thanking the beatniks for this sort of possibility, as Jason said, this openness, and that's what he locates in the beatnik attitude, is this kind of radical counter, right? This very like counter, almost counterintuitive mode.
Thank you so much. And Kaufman helped, as I understand it, invent the word beatitude, or at least to use beatitude for the anthology that he co-created and Jail Poems appears in. Beatitude. So obviously that's the beat attitude, but beatitude is also a kind of religious term that refers to a saintliness, right? And so the Kerouac side of beat was, I'm beat, I'm tired, I'm run down, I'm scruffy. But Kerouac aspired to beatitude. He didn't quite get to saintly, but someone like Kaufman really behaved almost like a saint, like a rough saint. All right, so I'm just going to read off some of the names of the poems this week, and then we're going to get to the phone call. And I'm putting into play, because I'm hoping we'll talk about a lot of these. So we have part one of Howl, Ginsberg's Howl. We have Kerouac's two prose pieces about, essentially about writing spontaneously, Technique for Modern Verse and Essentials of Spontaneous Prose. We have an example of Kerouac's prose, October in the Railroad Earth. We have some samples of Kerouac's spontaneous writing, sometimes called babble flow, which has been taken seriously by critics of experimental writing and jazz more recently. We have we have a bunch of sections of Bob Kaufman's jail poems, to which we just referred. We have Creeley's I Know a Man, which is probably a critique of the beat scene, but also in itself kind of very beat. We have Anne Waldman's absolutely remarkable performance piece called Rogue State, which I'd love an excuse to play during this webcast. And we have Amiri Baraka's Incident, and Baraka, of course, was a beat, but at a certain point he moved very much away, and by the mid-'60s he was far, far away. He was quite a critic of his former colleagues, and Incident is written later and is really, in part, a rejoinder to County Cullen's Incident from the week before. And two more pieces. We have Amiri Baraka's prose piece, which was a beat piece, identified as such, with praise of the beats in it, called How You Sound, or How You Sound. And then finally, Jane Cortez's performance piece called She Got, He Got. So those are the pieces. I hope we talk about a lot of them. Anna, who's on the phone?
We have our dear friend Terry Talty calling us from Denver.
Oh, Terry.
Yeah.
Hey, okay. Hey, Terry. Terry, can you hear me?
Oops.
Hi, Terry. Did Anna push the wrong button?
No,
Did Chris mess up the audio?
probably not.
All right, Terry, can you hear me? All right, why don't you hang up and see if Terry
Terry calls
calls?
back.
Okay, good. All right, would you, Jason, give the microphone to Danny Sample? Hi, Danny Sample. Low is relieved. Low is relieved.
What's going on?
Okay, Danny, I just made a
lost you for
list
second.
of the poems we did for this week. Say one that baffles you, or one that you just, we haven't talked about,
okay.
or are not likely to talk about, but you really think we should.
We have no idea what
Hey, Danny.
Okay.
Wow, this is a tremendous
How are you?
responsibility. I'm well. How are you, Al?
Good.
Yeah.
Is there any intrigues you or frustrates you, or you want to hear Gabe say something about?
Yeah, I mean I'd like to talk about Incident, I guess.
You want to talk about Incident?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we didn't really get to that. I think we're doing
Well,
that
we're
tomorrow
gonna
in class.
we're gonna do
yeah.
that in our own class tomorrow. But this is a webcast, and it's a really important poem.
Yeah.
Emily, what would you say right off the bat? You've thought about this poem a lot, I'm sure. We'll give Gabe a second to think about what his thoughts are.
Yeah, Incident, when we talk about that poem, we talk about the way it kind of decomposes, deconstructs a style of authoritative language that Baraka is suggesting is oppressive or implicated in kinds of oppression.
What's an example of an authoritative style or language that we read or hear in the United States that deserves being taken apart?
In Baraka's case, it would be that kind of newsy writing, which presumes to a level of kind of journalistic authority and omniscience.
Omniscient journalistic authority, and it's combined with, is there another rhetoric or language or vocabulary in it, Anna? You've got a phone call, but yeah, is there another
I'm
rhetoric?
sorry, I was focusing
That's
on
all
the
right.
phone call.
Lily, is there another rhetoric, another vocabulary that might be criticized here? Who's the we in We Know Nothing?
The cops.
Yeah, I think it's
Oh,
police
yeah.
rhetoric.
I kind of conflate those two things.
Yeah. Like, crime reporter
Right.
/ So it's almost
Police
like
report, or like like an internal police report, and
Right.
also like an interview that a policeman would give to a crime reporter.
Right. So
Yeah.
you've got you've got like police press conference, where in maybe the opinion of a lot of people in this room, but not of everyone, that we see a collapse of those two, so that the we know nothing speaks seemingly for both those vocabularies. Okay, so Gabe, would you say something, and then I'm going to ask Amaris if she wanted to add something about Baraka's Incident.
Sure. If we're not focusing on anything too specific yet, one thing that I find interesting about this poem that I feel like we haven't talked about yet in our time together is
Wait, say that again.
is the that we haven't talked about in our time together is
that's
the
sincere sentimental.
Sure, yeah. The thing I was gonna say is the comma work. So most of the lines are divided by upwards of 3, 4, 5, 6 commas in some cases. To to create these very long and expansive sentences, but also these very rolling, measured, and almost like rhythmic sentences that are. It's hard to say what their effect is. I think they're hypnotic. I think that they are disturbing in the sense that there's so many different adjectives piling up on whatever this case might be. But they also add to this idea that, like, they add to the irony of that line, "We know nothing," where it's like, actually, we know, like, easily, like, 50 clauses of things just from these lines that you've told us. And then at the end, it's like, oh, we know nothing. Other than all of that, we know nothing.
Other than that, we know nothing. And in between, other than that, and a whole lot of other stuff,
Yeah.
we know nothing. So there's a bitter irony. There are two, thank you, Gabe. Let's go to Amaris in a second, but there are two things that all the comma separators are doing there. One is creating that kind of stumbling, Steinian, there's a whole lot going on. It's really brilliant. I mean, it's just as good as any Stein in its comma separations, and the slowing and the kind of stumbling down the staircase, in a way. There is a stumbling down the staircase, so there really is a kind of modernism with a lot at stake, I guess. And then the second thing about commas I would suggest, and I'm not going to say anything more than to suggest it for anyone else, but if anybody's interested in Lawrence Ferlinghetti and the way the early Ferlinghetti, who's pretty good, the late Ferlinghetti I find to be fairly mediocre, sorry. And it's actually late now because he's still around in his late 90s.
Oh, this is true.
Yeah, sorry, Larry. But the early Ferlinghetti uses this building up the comma, this rhythm. The rhythm at the end of this poem, though he's post-beat, is so Ferlinghetti. I just want to suggest that if you go out there, you'll find that. Let's go to Amaris for another thought on incident, and we'll go to the phone.
Yeah, I just really enjoy how the sound of the poem really puts us as a witness, as a spectator to this horrible violence. It's very raw, the way he describes the incident of the firing. That staccato kind of halting rhythm we were just talking about with the periods and created with the commas. And then it comes to actually this really creepy sort of calm at the end with that really nice long line, the cool surprise and the fixture of his hands and fingers, moment of death when we leave the victim on the pavement. And I think just the sound of it is really, really powerful.
Thank you so much. Can I just quickly, pardon me to the person on the phone. I'm just going to take 30 more seconds. Jason, would you randomly give the microphone to one of the students? Ha 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 ha. Lo.
Hi, Al.
Hey, Lo. I'm going to ask you a general question because I know we're going to talk about this again tomorrow, but there's something fundamental here. What? There's something fundamental here in this poem, which is, I think we all presume when there's a crime committed that we would like clarity, that we would like it all untangled and disentangled and agency made clear. Because if you want to prosecute somebody, it would be nice to know who's the agent of violence and who's the victim of it. And yet Baraka's brilliance, we all say when we talk about this poem, is keeping it unclear. It's the maintaining the unclarity. So how do we square those two things? Because in life, I think in the world of prosecutorial action where crime doesn't pay, you kind of want clarity. But the poetry we study in this course is all about doing what Baraka does here, which is to make sure we never really understand much because that's the state of things. Any thought about that problem? I mean, I imagine that you grew up thinking clarity is a good thing.
Well, I'd say just how you kind of mentioned about journalism there. If you were to take a workshop on journalism or something, the first thing you kind of learn is that inverted pyramid. The who, what.
Can you bring the mic a little closer to you? Yeah.
Like the first thing you learn is like that inverted pyramid, like what, when, why it happened. So I think why this poem really intrigued me was that we didn't really get those answers, but we got this kind of sense of like incoherence around them, like how it happened, we didn't find out how, but we found out a bunch of details that sort of attributed to how. So I think that's what intrigued me.
Nice answer, Lo. Snaps for Lo, for serious. I'm open this to anybody. I have a feeling Lily wants to say something about this. Can journalism actually do Baraka's project? Not as a poem, but as journalism. Can journalism convey the lack of clarity in a crime like this, and should it?
Well, I think like
I think, like, as a direct answer to your question, we would have to like rethink what the goal of journalism is. Like, I feel like now with my reading about certain like political issues or big current events, I'll do like two different types of reading. Like I'll read an AP bulletin looking for like just facts or whatever, and then I'll read other news outlets or like journalists I really like who will give more context or whatever. But I think like ultimately Baraka encourages us by not making things clear to not rely on our heuristics, like what we would apply to this story. Like we might create a narrative or put these people into a box that they don't actually belong to, and in that way like trivialize what's happening to them.
Yes.
As in like, can you report on crime and create empathy for both agents, like the person to whom violence is done and the violent person?
Yes. Really well said. Final thought on this. Baraka is very clear about not being clear about identity, racial, more generally socioeconomic. You get the sense that he knows the scene, but he does not want to give you, and nor does McKay, by the way, does not want to give you those kinds of identifiers. And journalists are taught that's almost the first thing you do. Partly because they want to aid the police, and the police are always telling you this sort of basic description. So it's kind of like there's a kind of anti-profiling tendency here in the poem to try to keep a reader from doing any kind of profiling. Yeah. Like, is this black, so-called black-on-black crime? That's the question Baraka got most about this poem.
Yeah, he also hints pictures of the dead man are everywhere, kind of as to say, like, if you want that information, you can find it elsewhere, because
That's right.
You could pick up, like, the New York Post, put a big picture of his face,
and you will get the identifiers that you mostly look for, and they're typically racial identifiers. Okay, Anna, who's on the phone and gets a copy of Julia Block's Valley Fever?
We are really hoping that Terry can hear us this time,
Okay.
and that we can hear Terry.
Okay.
So, Terry, I'm sorry.
All right, so we're going to Terry now.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Terry.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great.
What year of ModPo is this? 3, I'm going to guess.
4.
4. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
That's
and I
really
met my first fellow ModPoian. I was in Dallas a week or so ago and met Terry Rife.
Oh, 2 Terrys, Terry Rife and Terry Talty.
It was so great.
That's really cool. One of you is
Yes.
Terry and one of you is Teri.
That's right. But 2 Terrys are better than 1.
Yeah. Anyway, you're getting a copy of, Julia from ModPo 13, 14, and 15.
Oh, yeah. I read another of her books. So I
Which
want
one?
this one. Her newest one?
Oh, yes. It's called
Hollywood Forever.
Hollywood Forever, maybe?
No,
Anyway.
maybe it was earlier than that.
Oh.
And I also just got your book from the library, so I wanted to call early.
Oh, which one? The anti-communist book, the 1950s
Yeah,
book?
yeah,
Oh,
I
cool.
just got it out from the library.
Okay, you're assigned to read it, and then we'll talk about it. Anyway, Anna will get your address, and we'll make sure you get a copy of this. I'm really happy you're getting this. This is great, and Julia will be happy too. She was thrilled when she saw me get all these copies. Do you have a question or a comment about one of the poems or topics?
Well, I'm asking for some advice. When I was in Dallas, I was visiting my 88-year-old mother-in-law, who is from England and has no short-term memory. But she and I have been reading Gertrude Stein.
Wait a minute. You're reading Gertrude Stein with someone with no short-term memory?
Exactly.
I hope you're getting her permission to record this or journal it or something.
Well, yeah, I have been writing notes on it. She's been great. She can really focus on these tender buttons and stuff. It's been great. She doesn't kind of like the idea of, the homosexuality so much, but
She doesn't?
No, she doesn't like that. So we go away from that. But
You
she
should have
likes,
stayed in Texas because it's a red state that's going to turn blue.
well, she's liberal, which is an oddity in Texas.
Yeah,
but
Texas is
she's
complicated.
just a little bit, she's 88.
Yes,
so
I
she's
get
a little,
that.
So
Yeah.
what beat should I start reading with her?
Okay. Wow, the question is, all right, so we're going to go around and so Terry, we're going to get answers for you. Would you mind taking the answers off the phone and through
Would
the
love
webcast?
that.
Okay, Terry,
love
great
it.
to hear from you. We'll get you the book. See you soon. Come visit
Yeah,
Philly.
thanks.
Come visit Philly. Okay.
Will do. Thanks, Julia.
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.
Everybody here, we'll start with the people in the Google Hangouts. Everybody here is going to say, you're recommending now for Terry what her 88-year-old mother should read among the poems this week. This is going to be fun. Okay, Amaris, you're first. Just name a poem. Don't explain it. Just name it.
All right, the classic, Howl.
Howl. Start with Howl, the 88-year-old. Okay, Dave? I know, Cottage Street, 1953, right?
And after that, I Know a Man.
I Know a Man. That would be good, I think. That would be good. That would be good. Max?
Well, I was going to recommend On the Road by Kerouac because it's full of like old-fashioned tough guys. But I guess if we have to go with one of the poems, then just go with the Kerouac.
You want the 88-year-old to read the Kerouac. You mean like Babel Flow? Because that's really kind of not fair to somebody with short-term memory loss.
Yeah, but it doesn't have any of the unseemly content.
Okay, thanks, Max. Molly, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I was going to say October in the Railroad Earth.
October in the Railroad Earth. Okay, Gabe?
I disagree with all of them. I would say
This is not a disagreement moment.
That's true. I'd say the Bob Kaufman jail poems.
Jail poems. Lily?
I think listening to He Got, She Got.
Yeah, that would work, I think. That would be really interesting. Davey?
I second Lily.
Okay,
Thanks,
Emily?
I'm listening to Rogue State.
Rogue State. Bushy. Yeah, that would be good. Carlos, give Carlos the mic. Hey, Carlos.
Hey, what's up?
Hey,
My
what's up?
God. That was loud.
Yeah.
I would say, just like Gabe, jail poems, for sure.
Okay. Jason?
I was going to go off book and say maybe Sunflower Sutra by Ginsberg, but I've changed my mind, and I think it should be Belief and Technique for Modern Prose by Kerouac.
Which one would help the 88-year-old? Which item?
Be Crazy Dumb Saint of the Mind.
Yeah, I think so. All right, give the mic to Regina, and she'll be the one from the crowd who gets to say what Terry's 88-year-old mother should read.
Definitely Rogue State.
Why? Why?
I love it. It's crazy. It's lots of sound, lots of stuff. Or watch the video and read it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, let's listen to Rogue State. Well, we got somebody on the phone, but why not listen to Rogue State, right? Here we go. Rogue State. Chris Martin, are you ready for Rogue State? Except that my computer is not loading.
Are you on the
I'm on the ModPo. Is that not working?
Well, PenNet is working for me.
Air PenNet. Go to ModPo. Okay, yeah, should have done that.
I might have a good question that's relating to Rogue State. We could set it up.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it looks like I'm connected now. Okay, so ask the question, then I'll
Okay.
play it.
So this came from Magdalena Ball, and
Yeah, Maggie.
yes, Maggie. And she asked on the Facebook feed. Sorry, Maggie, but I'm gonna paraphrase her question. She wants to know, in a week where we're like listening to and encountering a lot of performance poetry, how do we approach something that has a written element and a sonic element, performative element, like all at the same time?
Okay. Did you hear the question, Davey?
Yeah, Lily, can you say it again?
Yeah,
I'm
so
thinking
in the week where we're looking at a lot of performance poetry and pieces that include sonic and written and performative elements, like how do we approach those works and consider all the different things at once?
What an interesting question. So thinking about how to deal with the performance of something at the same time as you're dealing with sort of like semantic. work
Right,
of dealing
yeah,
with
yeah.
Something of being able to talk both about like Jane Cortez's performance
Mhm.
or Anne Waldman's performance without giving short shrift to the
Right.
poem itself.
Yeah, like how do you think of all of those elements as like coming together to make meaning around that text at the same time?
Right, and that's super tricky because we get really used to dividing poetry into sort of like, is it performative or is it not? And you're talking about performance elements and not talking about other things. And I think that Anne Waldman's a great person to think about this with because something that we've talked about in 88 is, does sound create semantic meaning? Or like, are you always thinking about the work that sound does separately from the work that the meaning of the words do? And I think with Anne Waldman, it's hard to think about those words without thinking about their sounds, or like Rogue State as a phrase exists as a sound unit, as it exists as a semantic unit. And I think that she's someone who's challenging us to think about, it's not that the words rogue state are being performed, it's that the way they exist in the poem is in her voice, that what we're reading on the page is a representation of Anne Waldman's voice. And her work often appears, I'm thinking about a piece of hers called Skin, Meat, Bones in different sizes. And I think that she's someone, and Beat Week in general is a week that makes us reach out and think about, can a sound unit be a semantic unit? Can they be the same thing at the same time?
Yeah, like she carries some of those performative elements into the publication of like the written work too, by doing different things. Like some of her work will have like strike through crossouts in it, or different spacing on the page and stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, we certainly, yes, Gabe, we certainly live in a period when, from the 40s and really coming to their own, thanks to the Beats largely in the 50s, the idea of recording, and then recording kind of inspires performance, performance that would go beyond a room because it would be recorded. And we happen to have here at Penn the home of Penn Sound, so there's 75,000 performances that are being saved, and that, of course, inspires younger poets to try to be conscious about performativity, and performance studies then booms in the universities. And it seems that, I mean, sort of Anne came to, she got this mainlined from Ginsberg and from the other Beats, and didn't have to wait around for the performance studies movement to blossom. But Whitman, had he been, had recordings been available, the Blab of the Pave would not have been so literal. It would have been that howl, what does he call it? Yawp. The barbaric yawp would have been, I can just imagine Whitman, yawping. And I think that this is partly a result of the technology that enables the witchiness of Waldman and of other poets to be performed and preserved and then discussed, because that recording that I'm about to play after you make a comment would be gone had we not recorded it in this room when it was, when it was made. And that allows us to really have these conversations about the interaction between sound and word sense. Gabe, sorry to go on like that. I was going to say to Davey,
I really like what you're saying, and I find a lot of it really interesting. And with that being said, I also want to push back on it and saying that I find some of the things that you're saying slightly essentializing, in the sense that it assumes that the poem cannot be the poem in another form, or presented in a different way. And I think when we're looking at a week with so many artists who are so invested in performance of their work, which is something that people are also talking about on the discussion forums, I think it's really interesting to open this realm of possibility of how can you transform those poems into different forms. So you talked in class the other day about a transcription of he got, she got, or she got, he got, and what that might look like. And actually, it looks like a massive block of text, right? And that has a different effect, but it's an effect specifically originating in the poem, and I think an effect that is still part of the poem if you present it in a different way. And if we had a written version of Rogue State, it's not to say that it's a different Rogue State, but a different occasion of the Rogue State, or a different presentation.
And we do have a written version of Rogue State. It's a little hard to find, but you can Google it and find it. And she, in this performance, improvises for the Bush era and adds a few things. And she did that almost in every performance. So will you just, we're going to play Rogue State. Would you just sort of apologize to the caller that will just be another minute or two? So, and I can't wait to watch the faces of the students who are all looking at me, because we did Rogue State in class the other day, and, it was kind of a solar sound, like, whew, Rogue State. Chris?
I'm in a rogue state, honey, getting unpredictable and strange. Just a rogue state itching to test my Harridan bardic range. Ours for the radical ecologist on the fringe. Oh, is the opportunity to make first war powers cringe. G is the genius hacker under alien skin.
That's cool.
You better watch out, every female activist akin. I'm in a rogue state, Papa Ashcroft. Don't tell me what to do. Your rules aren't my rules, 'cause I'm the lady of misrule. Wild card they call me, imperious, sultry, dark. Loose cannon on the gunnel. This literary cannon's got a subversive quark. National Missile Defense System got nothing on me. I can pierce through the Genome Project with a cyborg's vitality. Gated communities tremble. I'm a coming through the door. Rogue states a state won't humble. Call her witch. Call her whore. I'm in a rogue state, bushy. Don't tell me what to do. Your rules aren't my rules, 'cause I'm the lady of misrule. Rogue state, rogue state, rogue state.
All right, Jason, would you just bring the mic around here? Let's just get real quick. So, Caroline, what do you think when you hear that? She's right here. Caroline's right here. What do you think when you hear it? Just think or feel.
Oh, I just think it's fantastic. And we've been grappling with the question of whether or not sound creates a semantic meaning. And I think here it absolutely does, because you can hear the howling, spooky quality.
Yeah, and the trembling of the gated communities.
Yeah, yeah.
In the trembling. All right, how about Emily right in front of you?
Yeah, you actually just took the words right out of my mouth. When I listened to it the first time, it was just general reactions, but now listening to it, I heard her voice tremble in the word tremble, and I think that that is just really representative of form and content working together, and I don't know, it's really something else.
So let's go all the way back to Sydney. One more, and then we'll go to the phone. Hi, Sydney.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, is this your first webcast?
Yes.
Ooh.
I think it's kind of uncomfortable, actually. I mean, the way she speaks is very unnatural. She's almost chanting, but at the same time, you know, all of the inflections of her voice and stuff, they're still within her range. So you can see that she's capable of doing this, but she has to channel it from somewhere within her.
We've all been taught to think about poetry in a sort of Frostian way, or maybe the older Wordsworthian way of a thoughtful, contemplative, lyric, settled, and maybe there's something really exciting that's happened, but now it's being reported in reflection, right? But there's another tradition of poetry that probably goes back to, you know, way, way back to the earliest, which is respiration and inspiration, the relation between breath and making things, sorcerer's work, conjuring things, kind of doing what animals, including humans, do when they want to scare somebody. They just get big and they flash their feathers and, well, we don't have feathers, but you know what I mean. And they create kind of a body sound like you're supposed to do if you're encountering, I don't know, a bear in the woods. You're supposed to go, roar, you know, like, I think. Oh, you're not supposed to. Okay. All right. Nobody here try that, and do not sue my insurance company for recommending it. But I guess what I'm saying is that there's an entirely different tradition of poetry that precedes what my colleagues in the Renaissance call the modern period. We think of the modern period as 20th century. They think of the modern period as what would be the consolidation of the novel as a genre, of money and capital, and of imperialism and like declaring places that are yours. All that is the modern period. And prior to that, you get a whole different kind of poetry. And Anne Waldman is just like going back to that in a way, and she gets it partly through the Beats, who were trying to do, Kaufman coming up to you with Band-Aids and crosses and reciting poetry about being in jail. That's a version of this too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just gonna say she says a line early on in that clip in the poem, like my bardic tradition or something, like locating herself in that more like a poem that you would sing and maybe partly make up a little bit as you go along.
And that you would sing and make up. Yeah, and I regret that Jerome Rothenberg is not in ModPo anywhere, which is crazy. I mean, he's so important to this whole story, because while Waldman was really perfecting her outrider poetics in the 60s, Rothenberg was collecting lots of material from outside the United States, to say the least, and trying to find the origins of poetry and singing and chanting and so forth. Okay, so that's Jerome Rothenberg. So who do we have on the phone, Anna?
So on the phone we have, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about Hal again. We've got James Price calling us from Tallahassee.
Okay, great. Hello, James, can you hear me?
Yes, Al, I can hear you.
Yeah, it's great. This is your first time calling, is it?
Yes.
Great. How's ModPo going for you?
The pedagogy is kind of hard to deal with because I'm more like an experienced type person.
Okay, say that again more slowly because I really wanted to get it.
The pedagogy
Yeah.
part is slow for me because I'm more of an experienced person when I read things.
So you don't have to be sweet and kind about this. You're saying that the pedagogy is complicated for you because I don't lecture and provide answers. And you're... Nope?
No, well, I guess I've got an advanced degree, so I mean I'm used to pedagogy.
Yeah.
But it's the poetry and the art thing is more of an experience to me.
Okay.
Than it's kind of like the performance thing.
Yeah. So
If
it's
you
not
experience
the
it.
way the course is taught. It's the material in the course is pretty way out.
Actually, I found it very fun because I really like it.
Great. I like you. I'm just not understanding what's the difficulty.
I'm not sure how to put it. I don't translate my intellectual capacity into a kinetic thing. It's more like I'm visual and that kind of thing.
Oh, I see. Okay, I get it. That's fascinating. Do you think that a lot of people are turned off by this kind of work? And like you're engaged and you're calling and so forth. There must be a lot of people out there who just give up because they just don't know how to relate to this.
Yeah, I think that would be true. But a lot of it is the willingness that the individual has to plow through and to learn new things.
Yeah, well, I admire that. Is your advanced degree work in a science, technology, engineering, or math area?
No, actually, it's in human services.
In what? In human services. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I work in counseling kind of thing.
So, yes, so I mean, not to generalize too much about your field, but the idea is to extract from a system something you can actually give to people to make lives better. And the poetry kind of resists that and does sort of the opposite. It doesn't really want to, it's the opposite of any kind of vending machine, production of service, you know, and it doesn't want to have answers, and it wants you to get stuck in it and stay in it, which, you know, I think the poets in the 1930s felt really sad about that because they wanted poets to do something about extreme poverty and unemployment, and poetry wasn't really very good at that, you know. Anyway, you're calling from Tallahassee. What's your comment or question?
My question is regarding the reading of a lot of the beat stuff, the Howl, especially Howl. I remember when I first read it, and even when I read it now.
Yeah.
To me, I read it kind of like an existential experience where I just kind of follow them through the whole process.
Yes.
And it makes sense to me. And I'm just kind of wondering about how the effects of the existential philosophy that was so prevalent at that time within the beat community of life is nothingness, life is an illusion, being is nothingness, and we're all living on the bubble of life. We're all living on that external thing. We don't have any internal aspects of it. So whatever we were feeling at the moment, experienced at the moment, was part of the process, and how that plays into the writing of the poetry that you see.
Yeah, great question. And so friends, we're talking about possible connections between existential philosophy, which was all the rage at the time, and what Ginsberg is doing. And so I wanted to make sure that you got this book, James, Heat Wake. This is Jason's book. And you've won it by being the second caller or third, I can't remember what. So we'll get an address for you, and we'll ask Jason to sign it, thus making it twice as valuable, or to you, infinitely valuable because you're not paying anything for it. But I'm really glad for you to have this, so that'll be great. Okay, who wants to take my answer to James's question about existentialism is really going to be very unsatisfying, really unsatisfying. So I'd like others to start. So, Molly, do you have any thoughts about did you go through an existentialist phase? Did you read some existentialism? And do you see a connection between Ginsberg's extremity and existentialist philosophy?
I can't say that I have a lot of background or context in existentialism, so not really. But we were talking in my office hour the other day about whether or not the beats were seeking community, whether they were seeking to connect with one another, or if they were sort of writing as these very distinct and self-contained bodies, and then only coming together to sort of bounce those bodies off of one another.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't think we arrived at an answer, but
good. I mean, in a way, I think you're rightly thinking of the beats as characters in an existentialist novel, as opposed to the author of the existentialist philosophy. And I kind of actually think that might be true, but that doesn't get them as close as James wants them to. So I would like to turn to Dave Poplar, who is studying philosophy, and who I don't think existentialism is all the rage in graduate school in philosophy these days, but you certainly might have something to say about this.
It comes up.
Yep.
I think it's interesting how Western existentialism here almost leads to sort of an Eastern Zen type of vibe, where, like James was talking about, it does seem like a bleak existence. Everything's falling apart around us. But at the end of the day, just be in the moment, and that's where the enjoyment comes. Just, you can't even control everything that's falling apart around you, so just focus on the moment and be zen. And the beats were all about experiencing to the fullest extent the moment.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Emily, your thoughts on this? Do you have any?
Oh yeah, that sounds completely right to me. I think that whether fairly or unfairly, the kind of legacy of existentialism in popular culture and literary culture is a way of looking at the world that is kind of weary and resigned and disaffected, but through the kind of Zen influence, the Zen connection, that kind of rejection of absolute values, of kind of a teleology to kind of life and ideals, becomes kind of liberating, a chance to kind of remake things in your own image, in an image that you value.
That's really good. That's really good. I think I'll add my... James, are you still there?
Yes.
I'm going to add my thought, which is not going to be helpful, and then maybe you have a final thought, and we'll move on. I rather think, first of all, I read my existentialist philosophy and existentialist literature in college in the early 70s. And then I read the Beats, maybe at the same time, actually. And my reaction to the Beats was that they are not nihilists, and they resented the claim that they were. They really resented it. And I think that Ginsberg's Howl it may feel nihilistic, and there's a lot of people who are getting electroshock and who are jumping off bridges and not doing well, who are being pushed to the margins, and who are being self-destructive is really what they're being. And they have the freedom to be self-destructive, which is a problem. But I believe that they're the same thing that makes them kind of happy they got driven away from the academy is the same thing that kind of refutes the claim that they're nihilistic. They really think that what they're doing is going to revive a spirituality. And Bob Kaufman, most of all, section 22 of Jail Poems. Caught in imaginary webs of conscience, I weep over my acts, yet believe. I really think that, and there's one more that I will sort of quote later, but it's 34, section 34. The defective, he's in jail and he's seeing a fellow cellmate. The defective on the floor, mumbling, was once a man who shouted across tables. In other words, he looks at this person who's been beat and who's in jail for whatever reason, I mean, Kaufman was in jail mostly because of profiling as a seeming homeless person and someone who didn't have enough money to pay off the cops, and a person of color, obviously. And he gets to the jail, and there's a guy, a defective. He knows he's not defective, but he's called defective. The defective on the floor mumbling. Where's that guy been? Well, once upon a time, that man was shouting. He believed in something. It was the 30s, and he was a communist, and he felt that workers should have rights, and he was a person, and he's still a person, though called defective. I see that as tremendously anti-nihilistic. So I don't actually see the Beats as related to existentialism, which is kind of a problem because they sort of are. Anyway, James, your final thought on this, and thanks for calling.
You're welcome. I think that I add a little bit of the Zen into it for myself when I think of existentialism.
Yes.
Because it's being in the moment, experiencing things as they happen.
Yes.
And so that's why I think I don't think of it as so nihilistic sometimes.
Yes. Okay. That's great. Gabe has something to add, James, and then we're going to let you go. Gabe?
Yeah, I just wanted to also bring up from a historical perspective, adding on to what Dave and Emily were saying, if I'm not incorrect, a lot of the poets this week had heavy influence from Suzuki, who gave many series of lectures and teaching and wrote many books. And he moved to San Francisco, and he's basically the person who popularized Zen Buddhism in the United States, especially starting in the 50s and onwards. And so the Zen Buddhist tradition in United States poetry, which is a very rich one and a very problematic one in a lot of ways, is heavily based off of Suzuki's teachings and writings. And the Beats for sure, and Waldman for sure, are
and
all people
Philip
that
Whalen and all kinds of people.
And so in a history of philosophy sense, that's a person to look into.
Yes, and Gary Snyder is a kind of a direction the Beats take, and you get the Zen there. And I'm actually reading Zen and Psychoanalysis, which is maybe 1959 or 1960 right now, and Suzuki's in there, and I recommend it. James, thank you so much for calling and for being part of ModPo. Stick with us, and we'll send you that book.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to take one more call, and then we're going to be doing some final thoughts. And the last caller gets this doorstop. Yeah! Oh, my God, somebody responded, wants my book. Somebody wants my book. Come on, who is it?
It's Shannon.
It's Shannon Ratliff. Yay. All right, Shannon, we're sending you a big fucking book. It's coming. It's coming, Shannon. You could use it as a doorstop. She's saying something nasty, I'm sure. All right. What?
You do the webcast.
Oh, you want me to do it? Yeah, you do the webcast. Okay. All right, that's cool. All right, so give the mic to Kristen, please. She's right in the middle here in the second row. Kristen Molisani. Hi, Kristen Molisani.
Hi.
Hi. Can you give a general reaction to reading all these outsiders, dissidents, marginalized people, beat up people, beat people, jailed people, people deemed insane, people who do a lot of drugs, people who are ranting, people who are singing like witches? This is weird shit. And that's not usually in your curriculum, right?
Well, I don't know if I would say that's necessarily true. I think that a lot of poetry is weird shit, which is why I love it. But I think that it's been nice with the sort of disenfranchised sort of thing, a lot of the feelings of raw emotion and raw feeling, which I don't think is necessarily not the case. But even looking back at last week when we were talking about more traditional forms and about fitting into certain rhyme schemes or things like that, it doesn't feel, at least to me, as raw. It feels more polished, like you're taking certain thoughts and figuring out how to fit them and how to best have a certain effect by them. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I'm not saying that these works weren't edited, and I know that they were.
Of course.
But I think they maybe do a better job of keeping a lot of the feelings of rawness, of the deepest elements of the emotions, which was a nice sort of change in pace.
Great. Can you give the mic back to Julia?
For a reaction?
Yeah, same question to you. You know, it's a lot of ragtag, marginal people, some people deemed crazy. You know, should we be reading this stuff? It's weird.
Yeah, for sure. I agreed with a lot of what Kristen said. It reminds me a little bit of modernism. I think that they're working outside of a lot of the traditional frameworks, but I think I like it
better because I feel like that instead of just sort of playing around with it, they're adding a lot of emotion and anger, and they're very unapologetic about it, which I really like. I think it's very powerful.
All right. That's really cool. Carlos, can I ask you a quick question, and we'll go to Shannon?
Yeah, sure.
I saw The Best Minds of My Generation. This is a claim that obviously is Whitmanian and giant and maybe hollow, but still, to the extent that he saw some great minds of his generation destroyed by madness. Here we are in the late 50s. We've been testing the bomb. The Russians have the bomb. We're threatening in 1958. We're threatening World War III over 2 tiny islands off the coast of China, Quemoy and Matsu. No one lived on the islands, yet it was a whole, Formosa or Taiwan decided they were theirs, and the so-called Chinese communists thought it was theirs, and we almost destroyed ourselves completely over that. And he's saying, in this climate of anxiety, the smartest people I know are driven to madness. What do you think of that claim, and what do you think of that feeling? And do you relate to that at all? Not the madness stuff, but the, feeling like you live in a time in which people are really smart people are driven kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever people talk about turbulent times in history, sometimes I tend to lean towards that most times in history are turbulent. But if you think about what's happening, there's a lot of tension, and that's what I was going to say earlier about the existentialist thing, that there is a lot of turn towards Zen, but I also feel like there's this kind of like manic energy that's present in a lot of these beats, this kind of unbridled or want for unbridled expression people are talking about that they're responding to. And so I think that you could say that the beats, or if you're talking about, the greatest minds going mad, there's a lot of tension, and maybe, you see certain intellectuals releasing that and they seem nuts, and then the beats are sort of turning into that, and I think you might look at their work and say, oh, well, this is nuts. I mean, this sounds like a crazy person, or this person is literally on drugs, and but it's a kind of acceptance of that. So in that way, I think that it is Zen. I mean, it's dealing with a lot of tension and releasing tension, and there's a sort of calmness in that tension, but the tension is there, the stress is there, the manic energy is there.
Great. Well, thank you. Anna, let's bring up Shannon.
Okay. She has actually a really great question about history, so we're
all right, great. Hi, Shannon.
Hello?
How are you? Can you hear me?
I'm good. How are you, Dr. Al?
Oh, I'm so glad to hear your voice. You sound well, and I know that your daughter has been home, and you're celebrating all her successes.
Well, she was only home for a minute.
Well, you took some pictures and posted them to Facebook, so I guess it was an important minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, you're getting a copy of my book.
I'm so excited.
Do you really want it?
Yeah, but I may have to, email you with my 100 million questions.
How many questions?
100 million.
However many? Is that a Texas number?
100 million.
Oh, 100 million? No, that would be too many, but Shannon, any email I get from you, I will reply to.
You're so nice.
No, it's
to
true.
Me.
Okay. Can you ask a question? Because we're gonna take it fairly rapidly because we want to wrap up, but we can't wait to hear your question.
Okay, my question is this. First, I have to tell you how the question came about.
Okay.
So I was listening to She Got, He Got, because to me it was new, but I guess we had it last year, but I don't remember.
It's been there a couple of years, yeah.
And my husband, he went back to school and he's finishing up his teaching degree in history.
Yeah.
And he was listening to it, and then he got very upset.
Yeah.
And so we started talking about the kind of that.
Shannon, did you do a She Got, He Got right there at home?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And no, it was good.
Jane would love that. Jane Cortez would love that.
And he started talking about how lacking he feels in his ability to bring together a full picture of especially the second half of 20th century U.S. history. And I say, you know what? The Beats are the one, I think, who changed our political vocabulary and how we do this thing called democracy here. Is that wrong or right?
Wow. I love the last question there. Is that wrong or right? I'm going to invite a few people to say something. Dave has fallen out of his picture, so I assume he's like, oh, there he is. Hey, Dave. I want to ask Dave and Molly to respond to that. Nod if you got the question and are, yeah, good. Yeah, Molly, you're good. Okay. And I'll take a crack at it real quickly first. I think that Shannon, without psychoanalyzing your marriage, I think that what you're saying is that, well, Shannon and I have had these conversations before. I think what you're saying in short is that you're hot and he's cold. And I think that, I don't mean cold in the sense that is the sexy stuff at the end of this poem, but in the sense of the historian's view. I mean, we've listened to you for years, and you're interested in what Cortez calls hot. And she identifies with the Cortez identifies with the she side. One need not essentialize that division, but it's really helpful for Cortez to do it, because she sets up this moving binarism, moving, shifting, constantly changing, interacting binarism with her own son, the result of her own he-she thing, behind her playing the drums.
Right.
So I think that the argument that I've heard many people have, between what I would call the coldness or cookedness of history and historiography versus the hotness and the dynamism and the energy and the ongoingness of what we would call open poetry. And I think it's an argument that rages constantly. And all I can think of is the end of Gertrude Stein's rebuke to his, Picasso. There's a he, she. I mean, you talk about he got Picasso, right? And she gets the final word, and it's about history. Let me recite what history teaches. History teaches. It's just Picasso going on about everything, and she's got it. She does a Cortez there, I think, to him. So keep the discussion going. I'm going to turn to Dave and Molly to add any thoughts, and then we're going to hang up on you and wrap up. So okay, Dave.
I didn't have any comments on her relationship, but as far
you mean
as
on Shannon's, thanks a lot.
Yeah, on Shannon's.
Dave, you're so dry.
But
you were so witty.
To address that question she posed before about how the Beats changed the language of democracy, I think that in and of itself raises a whole number of questions about whether art is a reflection of our society. I mean, it at some level, it can't not be a reflection of society. Does art really stand on the forefront, the tip of the spear to push change, or is it really just a reflection of change that's happening? And I think these are just difficult questions. It's all intertwined. So to some extent, did the Beats transform the way we think of democracy? Yes and no.
Yeah, good question. I mean, Kerouac screws this all up because he very quickly becomes a right-winger. But that's a separate problem in a way. Molly, your thoughts on Shannon's comments and question?
Yeah. Hi, Shannon. And I have to run right after this, so apologies. But to return to Howl and the best minds of our generation going crazy, I can't not think about our political climate right now and what I see my peers and my friends and my colleagues going through intellectually and emotionally to try to unpack and figure out how to navigate what's happening in our country and in the world. And I think maybe the Beats were the first to say so explicitly how they felt about what was happening in their climate at the time, rather than couching it in a higher form of art, like this very raw, this very unfiltered anger maybe allowed us today to have a little bit more freedom in how we talk about democracy.
Yes, that's good. The late 50s may have been the first time where masses of young people were saying the very affluence and post-war peace, in quotes, the very ability for us to create all those peaceful suburbs and so forth, that very thing has created a pressure inside us that's making us crazy. It was said a little in the 30s and in France in the 1870s, and we have some record of it in Elizabethan England, but generally, we have records of this, don't get me wrong, but the point is that here was this moment where everything seemed to be hunky-dory, and yet not everyone, lots and lots of people were feeling completely unsatisfied. Not just the rebels without a cause. I mean, Ginsburg is relatively without a cause, but people who had cause to feel like they were being driven crazy by that very affluence. Hey, Shannon, so good to hear your voice. And
it's good to hear you guys, and thanks for being patient with me.
And tell your husband, for all the kidding that I've given him, the ribbing, tell him that we're grateful a few years ago when you needed his help. He was there to help you, and that was really, that was super. He's a great guy.
He's going to be a great teacher. He's looking at the teacher resources in ModPo to use in history.
Wow, Max is paying attention now. You hear that? So Shannon's husband is using TRC to help him learn how to teach history. Is that cool or what?
I'd be interested to hear more about how he's doing that.
I'll have him talk to you on the office hours, Max.
Yes, please, Shannon, have him do that. And
I will.
Have him send me an email.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
He's a big nerd.
He's a big nerd?
Yeah.
But we love him.
Yeah, we do.
And you too. We love you too, Shannon.
Okay, love you guys. See you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Shannon Ratliff. Okay, so we're going to wrap up with final words, final thoughts, anything at all. Emily, you look like you don't want to do it, so let's go to Davey and then to Emily and then around the horn. And we had to lose, I think, Dave. I don't know. So yes, so it's okay. Davey, final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to respond, Gabe, to what you were saying, and thank you for complicating that divide between thinking about.
He very gently called you an essentialist.
Yes, which I think.
No, it was great.
No, it was great.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
You are really good at this.
Thank
you. Yeah.
You're so nice and collegial.
It felt gentle.
No, it was great.
It felt like a nice. It was like a pinch. It was the way that teachers
It wasn't
would
even a pinch. Nobody felt it. It was fine.
Don't fight, guys.
I insist. Anyway,
in any case,
thank you for doing that.
I think that's something that that this week really complicates is, and that's something I was thinking about as we were listening to Rogue State, is that the lyrics to a song aren't another version of a song necessarily, and where does musicality change? Where does musicality and just straight up music, she's singing in a lot of cases, where does that change the line between something on the page being a version of something that's spoken? In what way do the beats put pressure on the iterative, the idea that a poem is something that happens once and it's over? And I feel at the end of this week really suitably confused about all of these things, and I feel great about that in my essentialism. And so, yeah, I'm glad to think about the beats as blurring the space between what happens on the page, what happens in time. Poetry gets to be a time-based art here, and that's exciting to me.
Wow. That's good. Things are happening here. All right, thank you, Davey. Emily, final thought?
I was thinking about Dave's response a minute ago about kind of whether art or poetry is kind of on the end of the spear of democracy, of change, which is, it's a huge question. It's the question, right, of does art matter in any kind of material sense? Does it matter beyond anyone who cares about art? And the answer is deeply unknowable, right? It's this kind of philosophical chicken or the egg. But I think what this poetry, what this material insists is that, well, you don't really know if art changes things, but it does have to try. And it doesn't have to kind of offer answers, but it does have to name problems. And when I think of kind of Ginsberg saying, the best minds of my generation went mad, it's not a kind of literal account, right, of every single great mind ending up institutionalized or insane, but so naming a problem that a certain type of genius that he values and respects cannot flourish within a particular kind of democratic failure, social failure. And Ginsberg, of course, doesn't really illuminate in any kind of practicable way a kind of path out of that problem, but naming that problem in of itself is the kind of democratic work that art does at its best.
Really well put. Thank you so much, Emily. Maurice, let's go to the Google Hangouts. Maurice, then Dave, then Max. Final thoughts, Maurice?
Yeah, I guess that's something that came up in the forums that we didn't really address tonight. Is this whole idea of spontaneity that Kerouac was propounding. And traditionally we think of writing as the product of a lot of hard work, of rewriting, not maybe necessarily filtering what you're saying, but definitely reshaping it and trying to give it some sort of intended form. And the whole point of the beats is that they were so interested in our subconscious and in putting out exactly on the page sort of the inner workings of their mind, maybe even unknowable to the poets themselves. And what is the value in that? What is the different approach and the different result that we get from that kind of spontaneous outpouring?
Yeah, they introduced the whole the possible connection between thought and language. And boy, oh boy, wouldn't it be great if we could have a closer connection to that. That's the dream of communism in a way, that we could say what it is we want and articulate what's in our head. It's also the dream of, the perfect love, and it's the dream of the perfect language. As Adrienne Rich put it, in her most radical phase, the dream of the common language. If we could actually have a common language, she was really anti-nuclear in this way. She felt that if we could actually say what we meant, then war would be impossible. And the Beats have that, Kerouac's ridiculous vision of the spontaneous writing, getting what's in his head out on the page. It's an impossible thing, and he tried all kinds of weird self-destructive ways to have it happen. But I think I want to admire in anyone who's trying to see if writing can be like thought, to give it a try for those super idealistic intentions. And I just really am tired of the poets settling for forms for the sake of forms, which is so opposite of what we're thinking about. It just doesn't move me as much as those impossible attempts to just see what happens when thought can resemble what is written down on the page. There are all kinds of exceptions to what I just said, but it's just fun to think about it. Dave Poplar, final thought.
Just a thought on Amiri Baraka's incident, which I think is just absolutely mind-blowingly profound. The last line, aside from the caked sourness of the dead man's expression and the cool surprise in the fixture of his hands and fingers, we know nothing. And I thought about that we know nothing line. What this is creating a picture of is really what's left behind, these pieces of evidence, these broken pieces, this evidence that's going stale.
Yeah.
And they're all remnants of something that was once real. And as a police investigation, you're trying to take these artifacts and put them together to recreate something that's real. And to me, that really just illustrated language, what language is, in a sense, especially in the Steinian sense, that these words, they're just artifacts. They're going stale like old evidence, and we try to put them together to create something that was once real. And at the end of the day, we really just know nothing.
Yeah. Well put. Thank you, Dave, and thanks for joining us tonight. Max, final thought?
I'm just trying to square a little bit what Emily said about the Beats pointing. So the Beats, doing art at its best, sort of pointing out, the problems without necessarily feeling the burden of offering solutions, whether it's Ginsberg or Baraka, as Dave just reminded us, or Anne Waldman to some extent. Trying to square that with some of the utopianism of the Kerouacian approach, or of what we were talking about a second ago with this kind of universal language. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a paradox or a bit of a puzzle that I kind of want to work through. Just this idea that if you just let yourself go and talk, you're going to solve all the problems that are otherwise in these other poems. Not necessarily these problems of, maybe they are in part problems of communication, but they seem to be tied to far larger systems and structures that it would be kind of hard to undo. So these kinds of these sort of experiments in expression and form are, they pose a challenge to them, but they don't seem to quite be undoing them in the way that Kerouac would want to.
Yeah. Oh, this is a giant problem, but I think that a little bibliographical reference for people who are trying to sort of crack the nut that was just so well described by Max. So at the beginning of the century, 20th century, Freud introduced the idea of, to use a phrase he didn't use very often, the talking cure. By the time you get to Kerouac, there's no interest in talking as therapy. There's all over the United States, the Americanization of Freud has a lot of people saying, if I just talk to you, my problems will become clearer to me. But the self-destructive quality of someone like Kerouac is he knew that talking isn't going to solve anything. It was just going to kind of keep him from the pain being worse, and that's kind of maybe a unique thing to him, but the refusal of the talking cure is one of the reasons these people kept talking. Anyway, that's for people who want to explore the kind of dead end of psychoanalysis at that period. Jason, quickly final word, final thought, and then Carlos and Anna, and then we'll go to the table here.
I think it's important to think about the beats as not necessarily making an art object in the way that we think of an art object, or the way that we think of a performance as something that has an audience, but that they are doing an act. They are creating an event that exists in the world as part of the world in a way that Western art tends to be framed as separate. And so in our encounters with it on the page, I think it's really important to, and I think Jerome Rothenberg, he brought up, gave himself the task of having to figure out how to put onto the page various ceremonies and rituals that involve dance and movement and chant, and to figure, and so if you look at how he solved them to put them on the page, you can't help but look at the page and remember that this is something other than a treasured poem. The other thing is my office hours start when I get home.
Right after the webcast.
Right after the webcast. Zen Cohen, I'll add, is would Dylan have won the Nobel if he had a perfectly polished voice?
You're taking my final word.
Oh, sorry, but that's my question. So it's a question about his voice, and I'll stay in my office hour. Isn't there a debate tonight?
Yeah,
I'll stay there, and we can continue talking poetry through the. We'll talk. We can talk each other.
Kind of running commentary on the debate.
Right. We can talk each other through the debate, quoting random lines.
More talking cures.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. And Carlos, final thought. You need to turn the mic. Good.
No, we're good.
Quickly, please.
Okay, I'll try. So I liked what Jason said about, I don't know if this will be quick. I liked what Jason said about it being an act versus, or the beat poem being kind of like an act as opposed to, or thinking about it as an object. Because I've been doing a lot of thinking in office hours. Somebody brought up some comparisons between imagism and the beats and sort of like where authority lies. And so if like when I'm reading an imagist poem, Williams is like there like crafting it and like there, the perfect word, and like here are some eyes to look at it with. Like if there's the authority, then where's the authority? How is it different in a beat poem, which is, am I like stepping into Jack Kerouac's flannel? Or is it a total lack of authority to say, well, sorry.
No, we're laughing in appreciation.
Oh, okay.
You're on a roll here, Carlos.
So yeah, basically, if it's even more authoritative to say, here's my consciousness as I've been recording it, here, now read it, or is it somehow less authoritative? Is it giving up authority? I don't know. So come to my office hours tomorrow at 6 and help me to find out.
Oh, great. Wow. Okay, cool. Anna Strong, final thoughts?
I guess I will just say simply that the thing that makes me really happy about the Beats is just their counterculturalness and their sort of insistence on their own subjectivity in the face of mainstream culture that they found so oppressive and damaging and
stupid and boring.
And that they didn't fit anywhere. So if you're finding it hard to find anything to appreciate in the Beats, at least appreciate their misfitness and the way that they sort of fly in the face of everything that, like, not to, beat this dead horse again, but that Frost stood for, right? Let's celebrate individuality. Let's try to find something to deal with the pain of not fitting in.
Cool. Thank you so much. Lily?
Yeah, it's not a secret that I have a hard time with this week in ModPo every year. But one thing I really appreciated about listening to Rogue State was both hearing, not for the first time, but really clearly hearing the moment in which Anne Waldman in the poem says, call her a witch, and she kind of sings witch, call her a whore, and almost like daring a conservative attack on her to call her those things. And then seeing a lot of reaction in Twitter and forums, like her voices like nails on a chalkboard, I can't listen to this, it's really difficult, people not liking to listen to it, which I understand it's very discordant and whatever. And so I've been thinking a lot about women's voices, and I've been thinking about Dylan, and I've been thinking about a really great Dylan is in Bob Dylan, who, as you may or may not know, just won the Nobel Prize in literature. I've been thinking about a really great essay called The Fragile Ears of Men, which is about Joanna Newsom, who's a singer, contemporary singer that has like,
big fan.
I love her, and she has a very out there voice, and that piece is all about how the author contends, and I agree with her, that men's voices, when they're unique, they are celebrated, and when women's voices are unique, they are deemed nagging, screechy, bird-like, etc. And so, I don't know, I'm just interested in pushing back on the impulse that says I can't listen to that, and trying to hear through some of the things that seem to attack us and figure out what is sonic about this and what's cultural about it.
When I get home, I'm going to send you 150 reviews of Dylan saying I can't stand his voice.
Okay, well, I will send you as many of Joanna Newsom, so we'll be locked in a battle.
I'm just saying that was universal criticism of
right.
Dylan
Well,
from
so the
1961
contention,
to 1967.
Right. The contention in the article is that women's voices don't get to be allowed to stand as unique. They have to. Joanna Newsom has to be like Bjork, or has to be like Kate Bush or whatever.
I believe it totally. I'm not disagreeing with that. But that was a complaint of Dylan, like big time. And it's even worse now, but anyway. I mean, the voice, not the prize winning. Gabe, final thought?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I hope I can make this quickly. Going back to Shannon's question, which her question was something like, did the Beats change how we can talk about democracy or how we think of democracy? And though that's a very difficult question to ask, I do want to assert that the legacy of the Beats and the history of the Beats and the memory of the Beats has given us and has become, whether you like it or not, a vocabulary by which we talk about radicalism and rebellion in the United States. The way that people have, the places that books like On the Road by Jack Kerouac, or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey, or in poetry, Coney Island of the Mind or Howell, the places that those books have taken up and the visual vocabulary of the Beats has really become a way by which we can talk about rebellion in the United States, which is a positive and negative thing. And I think one of the things that we should invest in this week is thinking about how to not undo that, but redo that process, change that process, think about what we have imported when we've imported the beats as the voice of the radical left or something like that, and performativity of the 1950s to about the 1970s.
All right, great. Thank you. My final thought is really quick. It's just to recommend How You Sound by Amiri Baraka, which is sort of toward the end of this week, and so I can understand why some people don't get all the way to it. He's talking toward the beginning of everything that could be put in poems, including garbage, the garbage of our lives, cement yards, jobs, cat's pee, all my interminable artifacts. All, he says, are poetry, and nothing moves pride apart from these things. There cannot be closet poetry. There cannot be closet poetry unless the closet be wide as God's eye. All that means that I must be completely free to do just what I want in the poem. All is permitted. There cannot be anything I must fit into the poem. Everything must be made to fit into the poem. There must not be any preconceived notion or design for what the poem ought to be. And he goes on to talk about the United States. And I think for him here, he says that the freedom to choose what your poem is, how its form takes up its form, and what goes into it is equivalent to the freedom he feels he needs and deserves as a citizen of the United States. Freedom in poetry and freedom in life. He saw the two things as the same, and it's called How You Sound. So it's so much is about how. So Lily and I conferred at the beginning that we wanted to shout out to T. De Los Reyes, who is what?
At her right now.
You are. And what's happening over there in the Philippines?
A super typhoon hit the Philippines, a couple of the islands early this morning, or I guess now it's tomorrow in the Philippines, so not super sure. But anyway, it was like one of the largest typhoons that's hit the region in a couple of years. So just want to say that I hope that T and hers are safe, and also all of our other ModPo people, and I don't know, stay
of
dry.
Which there are many.
Yeah.
And T, just to put a final point on it, tweets, despite the fact that she's living in a typhoon, may we all live to be disturbed by poetry, not by typhoons. Hashtag ModPo Live. All right. Thank you so much, Jason, Carlos, Anna, Chris, and Zach. Snaps for these guys. Oh, my. And Tyler, who came here to help out. Thank you so much. Gabe, thank you. Lily, as always. Davey, thank you so much. I'm glad, we get to elbow each other and sit next to each other. Emily, thank you. Amaris, thank you. As always, good night to you. Dave Poplar, Max, McKenna, and we lost Molly, but I hope she has a good day as well. And thanks to all those who came, and we will see you next time. Next week's the New York School. We're getting on. Okay, bye, everybody.